Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is One Punch Man Ova, episode 5, Bang, who is too overbearing. Episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happens within this episode. So, the episode begins when Saitama defeats the comet, and this gains Bang's attention. So he decides to follow Saitama to find out, what he's doing, and sees that he's together with Genos before recalling that, well, the comet was coming down. Genos had called out to Saitama, referring to him as a sensei. So he realizes that they may have a student-teacher relationship and decides to start stalking them. And then we see that they defeat a cabbage monster, and Saitama starts talking about, having cabbage for dinner, and Genos turns a conversation about dinner into a profound martial arts or hero type lesson. Bang then while he witnesses this, thinks that they are very much in sync, reflecting back on his own relationship as a student teacher with Sharenko, who we can see in the dojo sneezing because if someone's talking about you, you sneeze. Then we move forward to Bang revealing himself, and basically at first, he comes out. Saitama doesn't know who he is. Genos basically reminds him who Bang is. And Bang kind of, while he's watching them, is sitting there silently ruminating on, his own dojo and his own martial arts and how, Saitama would be even stronger if he knew martial arts. Saitama gets up to leave. He stops them. He asks Saitama how he got to be so strong. Saitama, of course, says just regular muscle training. Bang realizes that he's completely untrained as a fighter and says that he has still a ton of potential and invites him to his dojo, and Saitama takes the card. But then the next day, he doesn't show up, and we find out as he's shopping with Genos that the reason he didn't show up was that he was just trying to get away from the persistent Bang. But Bang shows up then anyways, and unfortunately Saitama's meat's run over by a vehicle because he tried to save a plastic bag he thought was a cat. And anyways, Bang approaches him and Genos, basically saying, "Come to my dojo, I have meat there." And Saitama obviously agrees because his meat's been run over. So they end up at the dojo where Bang first tries to show off his martial arts skills by putting a bunch of slates in piles and then using his skill to crack them all perfectly down the middle. But then Saitama just breaks a bunch of them with his punch and is like, okay, now where's the meat? So then they start to play another game, which is, I guess, a phrase game where Shrenko starts to read out a phrase and they need to snatch the card that has the full phrase before the opponent does. But this ends up not really working out because, well, Genos decides that he should incinerate them all. And so we then get our final game, which is rock, paper, scissors, but with um, basically you play rock, paper, scissors. Whoever loses has to snatch a helmet, while the person who wins has to snatch a little rubber mallet. And then, if the person gets hit with the rubber mallet before they can get the helmet on, they lose. If they get the helmet on first, then they win. And so they play this, and Saitama continually loses until he finally manages to win rock, paper, scissors once. And then he, is so frustrated that he actually unleashes his power, which almost ends up with Bang being in trouble. Luckily, he escapes before Saitama completely crushes the helmet. And Bang then basically says, Wasn't this fun? Don't you want to join my dojo? And Saitama says absolutely not. But they do get their meet, presumably in the end, as Bang does say that he was going to give it to him whether they played the games or not. Though we never see it on screen, so whether they got the meet or not, we'll never know. So now that we've been reminded what happens, it's time to rank the episode, and as always, we'll be ranking on two ranking lists, the mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. Now, it's occurred to me that when it came to some other series, when we got into like the special or OVA episodes, I only ranked it on the personal ranking list instead of the objective ranking list. However, I think I was lured into a false sense of security with the Road to Hero because it still had quite a few things from the objective ranking that applied. However, it was very difficult to come up with anything on the mostly objective ranking list for this episode and some of the others as well. However, ultimately, I did think that we got a lot more insight into Bang. I liked, so specifically how Bang felt about his dojo and his teaching style. For example, there are several points within the series where, like within this episode, where he ruminates back on, oh, maybe ruminate's not the right word, thinks back on or considers, seeing Genos and Saitama interact as student and teacher. He thinks about how he can interact better with Sharenko as a teacher and how their student-teacher relationship could be when he gets Saitama and Genos in the dojo and they're playing games. He's thinking back to how back in the day his dojo was so full of life and youth and he had many students and how he wouldn't mind seeing that happen again. And I was able to kind of construe that into multi-season supporting character growth by giving us more insight into Bang's thoughts on his student-teacher relationship and his dojo, while also trying to recruit Saitama. And that's why this episode managed to at least gain 3 points out of 10. And that brings our overranking so far in our mostly objective ranking to Road to Hero in first, the ninja who is too complicated. This episode came in third, Bang, who is too overbearing, a shadow that snuck up too close, and then the pupil who is an extremely bad talker or poor talker is in fifth. Bringing us now to the personal ranking. So as mentioned, we got some more insight into Bang as a character. I did find it funny how Saitama did not remember him, and how he went full stalker mode in the bushes when they don't come to the dojo the next day where he's waiting for them. He then like does the whole like trench coat fedora thing to like start trailing them before eventually offering them meat at his dojo. I also thought it was fun how they played all the different games. And there were a few points that made me chuckle, like when Saitama sees a truck heading towards like a crowd of people, and he decides not to stop the truck, but to try to save a paper bag he thought, or a plastic bag he thought was a cat, while Genos is the one who actually like lifts the truck up and stops it from hitting people. Unfortunately, not before it had run over their meat that they had just purchased. And then, of course, Saitama being very bad at games and getting super frustrated to the point where he does manage to release his full power, or at least part of his power, and almost ends up accidentally killing Bang. But overall, again, like it was an entertaining episode, but I just felt like it could have done more, gone harder on the comedy side, maybe done more action-wise, something more. While I did while I did like it for what it was, I also feel like I could only give it a 4 out of 10. And as such, our list on the personal ranking was A Shadow That Snuck Up Too Close in first, Road to Hero, The Pupil Who is an Extremely Poor Talker, then I put this episode in fourth, Bang Who is Too Overbearing, and then A Ninja Who is Too Complicated is in fifth. And that now brings us to our series ranking so far. On our mostly objective side, season one's in first with 88.33%. Season 2 in second with 74.17%, and then the OVAs so far have a score of 18 out of a possible 130. Meanwhile, on the personal ranking, we had Season 1 with 76.67%, Season 2 with 65.83%, and then the OVAs so far have a score of 24 out of 130. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked One Punch Man Ova Episode 5 Bang, Who is Too Overbearing. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.